So I told my friend that I was doing this TED Talk on the science of sleep, right? And you know, she's one of my closer friends. She normally cares about like stuff I do, stuff like this, right? But when I told her this kind of big deal for me, that I was doing this TED Talk on the science of sleep, you know what she did? She laughed right at my face. And I looked at her like, what is she doing, right? This is kind of like a big deal. And she just laughed again. She said, but Aditi, you like never sleep. And in all honesty, you know, she wasn't wrong. You see, in the past few months, I have barely slept. With the beginning of freshman year, numerous honors classes, busy extracurriculars, and cultural festivities all going on at once, sleep has grown to become one of the last of my concerns. I always find myself wondering, do we really have to sleep? Like, is it really necessary for us to shut our eyes for hours just to reopen them again and continue our day-to-day routines? Why can't we just keep going through all of these tasks or like activities that we want to do continuously? Why is it that there comes a time in each day when our eyelids start to droop, our thoughts are all fuzzy, and before we know it, our head has crashed onto a pillow or a desk, whatever's closer? Well, today I think I finally found the answers to those questions, which is what I'm going to be sharing with you all. Hi, my name is ADITI CHAWLA'S, and today I will be discussing the science of sleep and why I believe you need it. Let's pause for a second and just kind of a quick disclaimer here. We all know that sleep's not new, right? We all know that it's not some novel concept that was just made. It's been around for a long time. But the importance of sleep has been drifting away in the past few decades because people make their schedules busier, but they don't allocate the same amount of time to rest. And so I hope today in this TED Talk that I can explain to you why it's absolutely necessary to take sleep as one of your biggest priorities. Of course, everybody knows that sleep is really important, and so they recommend that teenagers our age should be getting 8 to 10 hours of sleep every night, right? But looking around the room today, I don't think I can confidently say that any one of us is meeting that health requirement on a daily basis, including myself. And that's completely expected, because here at Brahmas High School, we take on a lot of hard work, such as coursework. We also do a lot of sports and music-based activities, and whatever other family time or social time we have left seems to make our schedule feel airtight, as if there isn't a second for anything else, not even rest. Now, of course, we're humans, right? So rest does cross our mind often, whether it's the enticingness of a nap after fourth period or before lunch, or the desire to crash onto your bed right after you come home from school. And when we do give in to these desires, which does happen occasionally, right? We know that either A, we're going to not have enough time afterwards, we're going to be working late into the night once again, hacking away at a deadline at 3:30 a.m. Or B, we just won't get any work done that day whatsoever. We'll be completely unproductive because we're so drowsy and tired from our nap. Now, both of those things don't sound very great, right? But they've definitely happened to us many times over the last few years. And so what I think is interesting about neuroscience is that it provides us with this kind of cause and effect relationship that explains what I call the science of sleep, which explains kind of how much sleep that we get and how it affects how we act throughout the day. So to start with this TED Talk, let's go into just the brain, the physical brain, and see how it looks and acts in terms of how much sleep it has gotten the night before. Okay, so here we have the brain with the recommended amount of sleep. Now, how do I know this, right? Well, you can see a lot of these orange-colored or yellow-colored blobs, right? And these actually signify increased levels of blood flow. So judging by that, you can tell that they're kind of well spread out throughout this brain, right? And there's a lot of blood flow reaching this brain. So when there's a lot of blood flow in that brain, it's a lot more energetic and productive, and it's kind of ready to go with the day's events. Now, on the other hand, of course, here we have the brain that did not get the recommended amount of sleep. So this might be some of our brains right now. This brain probably got 3 to 6 hours of rest the night before, and we can tell that just because there's less of those orange or yellow colored blobs, right? There's less levels of blood flow. And so because less blood flow is reaching this brain, the two main parts of the brain that are impacted the most by this are your frontal and parietal lobes, which you can see over here and over here. So your frontal and parietal lobes of your brain are two parts of the brain that we rely on a daily basis. These parts of the brain are in charge of your memory, so remembering things however well you want to remember them, solving problems, and making decisions. And when you have less sleep, these parts of the brain are impacted the most. Now, given those two choices, I'm sure everybody would prefer that first brain as opposed to the second, right? But what if you don't have a choice? Now, I'm not saying that we have bedtimes or anything like that, but what if that choice is made for you by deadlines, friends, video games, procrastination, anything you can think of. What's the plan when you really don't have a choice and you've had little to no sleep the night before and a busy day ahead? Well, on that busy day, I have 3 tips for you. So on that busy day, you're going to remember to do 3 things. Firstly, you're going to make choices or decisions really carefully. So I don't mean that you should overthink every little decision you're making, but you want to take a second to say, okay, this is what I'm going to commit to before I actually commit to it. Secondly, you want to write things down that you normally be able to remember off the top of your head. So this is stuff like history notes, math notes, any kind of notes, maybe a Starbucks order, maybe something your friend or your family member wants you to remember for them. Things that you'd normally be able to be like, okay, I'll make a mental note of that. You won't be able to do that with less sleep. So you're going to have to write them down, or take a picture, or take a screenshot, whatever's convenient in the moment. And then lastly, whenever you're solving math problems here, or if you're solving any kind of computational problems, or even if you're in the real world and you have to solve a problem for whatever reason, right? You have to stay patient and positive with yourself, because the problem is still hard, but you have almost half the amount of brain power that you would have with the right amount of sleep. And so you have to stay patient and positive, because a little bit of optimism can really go a long way with this. Because otherwise, if we continue such poor kind of sleep schedules on a daily basis, sleep deprivation can actually be detrimental to our overall health, according to Nora DeWalkow of the Radcliffe Institute at Harvard University. She tells us that it can actually lead directly to brain diseases such as Alzheimer's, addiction, chronic pain, and many more. Additionally, our hormonal release patterns and sleep cycles in general are affected by the amount of sleep we get, according to Professor Russell Foster of the University of Oxford. He tells us that the amount of sleep we get affects our sleep cycles and our hormonal release patterns in terms of, so you can see here our pineal gland, right? And this pineal gland secretes a hormone called melatonin. And melatonin is basically in charge of inducing that sleepy feeling within us right before nighttime. This is what causes us to go to sleep. So if we don't get the right amount of sleep the night before, our circadian rhythm, or in other words, our internal body clock, won't know what time to go to bed. So even if it's dark outside, even if it's 11 or 12 at night, our body still won't know that it's the right time to sleep. And so you'll never be able to get sleep at all, which can be really frustrating. But why should we worry about all those things if they're supposed to affect us way in the future? Like, these things aren't gonna happen to us now, right? We're not gonna get diseases right away by sleeping less. But if we keep doing this year by year, it can only get worse. And additionally, the American Psychological Association actually shows us a study that shows exactly how detrimental sleep deprivation can be to teenagers in the United States today. So they're reporting extremely high stress levels, you can see in the light blue, which is a lot more than those in the dark blue that do say they're getting the right amount of sleep. The teenagers in the light blue are feeling extremely high stress levels right now, just because of their lack of sleep. And these extremely high stress levels, you know what they lead to? They will lead exactly to those brain diseases that we discussed earlier. So why am I showing you these statistics? Well, I'm not showing you these by any means to alarm you. I just want to provide you with a reality check, because we are not sleeping correctly right now, and the only thing we should do about it right now is to fix our sleep schedules. So you may be thinking, now what? What should you do with that information, right? You know you have to fix your sleep schedule, right? But how do you do it? How do you start sleeping better so that you're using the science of sleep that we just discussed to your advantage? Well, let's go over the do's and don'ts. So in order to get better sleep, starting with the top row, you want to limit your screen time. So I don't mean like limit the time you're going on Google Classroom or limit the time that you're calling your family or your friends. What I do mean is limit the time that you're scrolling on your phone. Because not only are you wasting valuable rest time or you're procrastinating when you scroll on your phone, but you're actually causing irreparable damage to your eyesight. And those blue rays actually cause you to sleep way worse at the night when you've been on your phone for too long. Additionally, you want to avoid having too much heavy food or caffeine right before you go to sleep. And lastly, you want to limit being too stressed right before you go to bed, and instead try to meditate or do something that calms you right before you go to sleep. So with these 3 don'ts, I would recommend at least 1 or 1.5 hours before you go to sleep, you should stop doing these things. Now, what should you do to get better sleep? Well, I recommend that you exercise more, keep a cool and dark or dim sort of environment when you're sleeping, and take a hot shower beforehand. All 3 of these things are clinically proven to give you a better suited sleep schedule and also make sure that you have healthy rest. Now, all of that being said, nobody's perfect, right? And there may or may not be a possibility that I've written at least part of this speech past midnight. But I think that just goes to show that we're all trying to improve our sleep schedules. And even though it's not an easy thing at all, but if we start trying right now, it'll definitely be better for us in the future. So that's where I'll end my remarks today. I hope you'll all consider the information I provided you with, and just recognize that taking sleep seriously right now will only benefit us in the future. In fact, the most that I can implore you to do today is to take 1 second to think about how, when, and why you're sleeping, and to never go without healthy rest for long. So now that you've heard it from me, just do it. Just go to sleep. Thank you for listening.